All right, Eleanor is the Illinois Pollinator Liaison for the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, also known as NRCS. She will be sharing about the importance of native pollinators and native plants. Eleanor previously worked as a resource conservationist for a soil and water conservation district in Southern Illinois. She holds a master's degree in natural resources and environmental sciences with a focus in pollination ecology from the University of Illinois. She is an Illinois master naturalist and has 3 prairies of her own, which she restored in 2016 and actively manages. So Eleanor, you can go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Elise, and thank you so much for putting on this fantastic event. I'm Eleanor Schumacher. I work for Pollinator Partnership as the Illinois NRCS liaison and also the Project Wingspan Illinois State Coordinator. I'm a gig economy person, so I also have another job working for the Illinois Department of Agriculture as an apiary inspector. I inspect beehives. I've been interested in pollinators and their habitat since 2008 when I first got my own beehives. Working for the Illinois Department of Ag for 11 years as an apiary inspector really changed my perspective about the actual dangers that pollinators face in the environment. It also gave me an appreciation for how critically important it is that our nation and our world do everything we can to put back pollinator habitat and to keep our food security strong that way. Pollinators and flowers depend on each other. Pollination is an ecosystem service, a system that supports life on Earth. And the fact that there are so many different flowers, so many different pollinators that make up this system is something we need to be aware of and actively protect and recreate our landscapes. I keep a positive outlook about the decline of pollinators and the steep loss of their habitat. I'm positive because working with bees, I've seen what Mother Nature is capable of, how she has healing mechanisms built into life, all of its forms, and all its ecosystems, life-supporting systems. I'm positive because I live on a conventional dairy farm. I have 40 hives of treatment-free honeybees, and I have 3 small prairies I built and manage on my own, totaling 5 acres. And I live in a farming community that includes an organic farmer and some conventional farmers, many of them conservation farmers who are passionate about nature and human health. I know we can do this, but we have to be honest about the facts. We have a pollinator paradox. The United States and truly the whole world relies on pollinators to feed us. $20 billion worth of US products are pollinated by bees, butterflies, beetles, ants, and flies. But our farm and ranch lands that support pollinators are disappearing at a rate of 3,000 acres per day. We know that pollinators are in trouble, but how bad is it? What's actually happening? Over the past 35 years, our agricultural and natural resource agencies have noticed a rapid decline of pollinators due to several causes, including land use intensification, pesticide use, climate change, exotic and invasive species competition, and the spread of pests and diseases. Here's a poster put together by the Xerces Society that breaks it down pollinator by pollinator. We have a 28% decline in bumblebees. 19% of US butterflies are at risk of extinction. 50% of leafcutter bee species are at risk. 27% of mason bee species are at risk. And 27 species of non-native lady beetles threaten our native beetles. Put this together with USDA resources that report numerous species of butterflies, moths, and native bees are either extremely rare or are extinct. We realize we have a real problem on our hands. Between 2008 and 2014, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture granted $40 million to researchers, extension, and educational outreach. USDA has supported agricultural programs geared towards wildlife for a few decades, but in 2014, pollinators got a much more primary role on the stage. Here's a picture of here's a picture of Illinois' own Dr. May Berenbaum, head of the University of Illinois' Entomology Department and past president of the Entomological Society of America. President Barack Obama just awarded her the National Medal of Science that year. Research like hers helped gain recognition of the pollinator decline problem. The Obama administration established the Pollinator Task Force to develop a national strategy to protect and promote the health of pollinators. USDA and US EPA released the Pollinator Research Action Plan in May 2015, which called for a federal agenda, including research to restore and increase pollinator habitat and populations. Most importantly, though, what's happening to pollinators? You're here today to see what you can do. We're working together to save them, and we have a long way to go. It takes decades worth of research to influence policy. The research is ongoing. A focus on food security is key to helping the world understand what's at stake. These are figures that researchers agree on. 75% of global food crops depend on pollinators. 1 out of 3 bites of food we eat are because a pollinator visited a flower. Declines in production are associated with pollinator decline. On the right of the slide, you see what's now a well-known picture. This is from Whole Foods' Share the Buzz campaign, a collaboration with the Xerces Society in 2013. Here's a better look at those pictures. Your produce choices with bees, your produce choices without bees. Global agriculture and our national agriculture is vulnerable to pollinator decline. This USDA map shows which states are the most affected by pollinator decline. A new study was just published in Environmental Science and Technology this year. It shows the economic dependence and vulnerability of our US agriculture sector county by county. The figures were based on 2012 US agricultural industry of pollinator dependent crops, a $34 billion industry at the time. A picture of the vulnerability of our food security and associated economic losses helps us see how close to home pollinator decline hits. Researchers have been highlighting pollinator loss as a threat to our existence for decades, studying important animal and insect pollinated crops worldwide. Here are just a few studies that have shown what's at stake. A 1994 study that showed 84% of European crops depend on animal pollination. A 2003 study breaking down the economic worth of honeybee population and native bee population that estimated $6.8 billion were attributed to honeybee pollination and $3.1 billion to native bees. A 2008 study estimated global crop production from insect pollination was worth $217 billion. And now this study, from where this picture comes from, our map of vulnerability, it identifies the counties most vulnerable based on the type of pollinator-mediated foods they produce, but also based on the scale of pollinator decline in that region. Most vulnerable. In first place, counties producing fruit and nuts. In second place, counties producing melons and vegetables. In third place, counties producing oilseed like canola and soybean. You see, if you look at our state, Illinois does have some color. Illinois is the #1 state for pumpkin export, and of course, a big soybean exporter. But we have extremely low acreage of pollinator habitat and steep pollinator decline. Put these studies together with studies that show how pollinator habitat incorporated into cropland can make on-farm improvements, and we have new methods of conservation. This 2017 Prairie Strip study from University of Iowa showed amazing benefits from planting pollinator habitat on farms, a real winner. Here's a look at the results. 44% reduction in water runoff, 95% reduction in soil loss, 90% reduction in phosphorus runoff, 84% reduction in nitrogen runoff, no difference in per acre corn and soybean yields, weed abundance did not increase, and reduced emissions of heat trapping gases, especially nitrous oxide. Now that's all great news, but if you were disappointed reading that there was no difference in soybean yields, it's not bad news. It showed that incorporating pollinator habitat into crop fields didn't reduce yields. That's a positive. Anyhow, there are studies that demonstrate increase in soybean and other crop yields. Let's look at a few. Here's a strong one. This study found soybean yields were significantly increased by honeybees and wild bees. And then this 2017 study found honeybees increased soybean yield by 18%. Just published this year is an extensive review of all the studies investigating the influence of pollinators on self-pollinating crops like soybeans, cotton, coffee, and canola. It showed benefits from native bees and called for more study. Finally, a 2014 study that looked at native bees on canola in Manitoba. They suggest growing wildflowers adjacent to canola field margins to increase canola yields. They found the system of pollination significantly strengthened with benefits to the crops when pollinator habitat was planted nearby. This study highlights an extremely important concept, that pollination is a system that revolves around diverse populations of native bees and native wildflowers, benefiting from each other. Now let's take a look at the system that once governed this land we live on. In Illinois, this prairie wildlife habitat that we're racing to restore once covered 60% of our state. Illinois had 22 million acres of native wildflower and grasses, teeming with pollinators. Today, we only have 2,500 acres, about 1/100th of 1%. But this number is on the rise with people like you taking interest in either planting or helping manage pollinator habitat. Here's a look back in time. A University of Illinois professor of botany named Arthur G. Vestal authored beautiful descriptions of rich prairie landscapes that were quickly disappearing 100 years ago. His book, A Black Soil Prairie Station, documents native wildflower communities as they existed undisturbed in northern Illinois. Here's a quote: "Perhaps the most luxuriant type of prairie, with a large number of plant species. Until recently, small and scattered areas of this prairie were still abundant west of Chicago as far as the Fox River and beyond." While several of the scientific names of some of these native wildflowers and native grasses have changed, we recognize most of these species and include them in pollinator habitat restoration mixes today. This is a list of species he found at a typical upland prairie site. Red circles around grasses, blue around wildflowers. Let's see the pictures. Little blue stem, big blue stem, Indian grass, switchgrass, prairie dropseed, partridge peat, hoary vervain, Savannah blazing star, gray goldenrod, stiff goldenrod, silky aster, and white heath aster, which you might think of as a weed, but the pollinators love it. Here is what Vestal found in a typical mesic prairie 100 years ago. Mesic means moderately moist, whereas the previous slide was drier. Let's jump right to the pictures. Cream white indigo, lead plant, purple prairie clover, goat's rue, round-headed bush clover, common evening primrose, butterfly milkweed, whorled milkweed, hoary puccoon, compass plant, pale purple coneflower, yellow coneflower, and field thistle. Why are these plants and their communities so important? In our general understanding of flowers, we think of gardens, human-controlled spaces that are planted in exotic species. This creates a problem for two reasons. One, many of our native pollinators don't recognize the non-native plants. Many bees are specialists and have specialist diets that depend on one kind of flower. They didn't evolve with the cultivars we buy at the typical garden center. They don't recognize them and can't be sustained by them. Two, when plants are bred and manipulated into cultivars, new plants are created for color and height. We see some nectar profiles changing, and this can result in loss of nutritional value for the pollinators. For wildlife, natives are better. Who are these pollinators? They're not just bees. Flies are important pollinators, specifically syrphid flies, bee flies, and tachnid flies, not house flies. The most important flies to flowers are the syrphid flies, all of which consume nectar. Butterflies and moths are next in line of importance after the flies. They are nectarivores. Some studies have shown some species to travel farther than bees, which has genetic advantages, that plants get genetics shared over greater distances. And don't forget about hummingbirds, beetles, and bats, also pollinators. But bees are the most important pollinator. All species of bees are florivores, with adults and larvae feeding on products of the flower. Their bodies have pollen collecting structures, which makes them pollinating superheroes. The United States has 4,000 species of bees. Now, how do we talk about 4,000 species of bees? The easiest way is to classify them by where they nest and what they eat. 70% of native bees are ground nesters. They nest in bare soil, just under bunch grasses and prairies. They like sunny south-facing stream banks and mud cliffs, or they'll dig some holes or find some holes that were already dug by someone else. 30% of native bees are cavity nesters. They like pithy twigs, snags or dead trees, bundles of reeds, wood blocks. And then we can break bees into generalist and specialist categories. While most bees are generalist, meaning they'll pollinate anything their little tongues can access, 20% of native bees are specialists. Specialist bees have a mutualistic relationship with the flowers they've evolved with over the eons. This coevolution has changed the characteristics of these species to match each other more closely, to the exclusion of others. It's very romantic. Let's learn about just a few of the species. We don't have really much time left. So let's see, we'll look at this. We'll go fast. In 2010 in Hancock County in Western Illinois, native bees were trapped and identified to create a picture of what kinds of native bees could still be found. The traps were set at the Kib Life Science Station in Warsaw, Illinois. The study was led by Professor Ken McCravey from Western Illinois University and published in 2014. His team trapped 4,622 bees of 31 genera and 111 species, quite a number. Here's one important one they found in fair number, the squash bee. Squash bees are specialists visiting only squash flowers. A little about this bee. Of the 13 species of squash bees, Peponapis pruinosa is the only squash bee native to the United States. That's a lot of pressure considering USDA calls them the most important specialist bee in agriculture. Leafcutter bees are also really important to agriculture, especially alfalfa. You see this one on top carrying a rolled up leaf. It cut the round piece of leaf just as it landed in 2 seconds. Before it even finished the cut, it was already lifting off to fly again. That's how they do it. That's why you might see holes on your rosebush leaves, but you never see who'd done it. The leafcutter bee lines its nest and wraps its brood in leaves. He also found the Anthophora abrupta mustached mud bee, which pollinates cranberries, lives in mud banks. And an interesting thing, the University of Florida researchers discovered colonies of the mustached mud bee in bags full of mud, and they're trying to manage colonies for production that way. A lot of bumblebees caught by the study. There's 47 species of bumblebees in the US. They're especially valuable for their buzz pollination, which kicks up a large amount of pollen all over their hairy bodies, which they then transfer. They're the first and last of the season to pollinate, but there's a very steep decline in several species and a lot of diseases and habitat loss. Just a picture of a whole bunch more different kinds of bees that they found over there in Warsaw. And here's my plug for Pollinator Partnership. We're a non-for-profit organization with all kinds of programs and opportunities to save pollinators. Here's a visual glance at some of the many projects and resources we offer. Of course, your local USDA Service Center is a resource for you. You can find pamphlets and informational materials to learn more about planting pollinator habitat. You'll hear more about that from Vicki. She's up next. But how can you save pollinators? Get as much as you can out of these presentations today, and look for presentations during Pollinator Week, June 21st through June 27th. If you are a landowner or a farmer, USDA can help you establish pollinator habitat. My organization, Pollinator Partnership, can complement what they offer by certifying your farm as a bee-friendly farm, BFF. Use our BFF logo and your certification it adds value to the crops you grow and sell on your farm. Also, very important, you can help me establish more Illinois acres of pollinator habitat by getting involved with Project Wingspan. I'm seeking volunteers for the 2021 season. We're collecting native wildflower seeds and awarding them to local pollinator habitat projects. It's a labor of love and a lot of fun. Plant a garden. Vicki will tell you how next. I'd like to close by saying a lot of people want to save the bees by becoming a beekeeper. As an Illinois Department of Agriculture apiary inspector that works with beekeepers and their honeybees all over the state, I would like to say, Being a beekeeper does not save the bees. Planting habitat is the way to save the bees. Thank you.